Hi, welcome back to Plan9Crunch. I'm Joe Gibson. Every week we read from a genre novel, often the cult genre novel, sometimes kaiju genre novel. That's what this is today. So, Ultraseven, the official novel of the series, I read from its predecessor by Pat Cadigan, Ultraman, the official novel. Once I read from this already, and I thought this was so good, even better than the previous one, it deserved a second go. I don't want to spend too much time on this particular one, though, because I've already introduced the book, and you should buy it if you're interested. But let's jump to something, because there's a discussion to be had about Dan Moroboshi, Agent 340, Ultraseven, that this can introduce us with. Agent 347, sorry, 347, Agent 340. Dan's eyes flew open. He could hear the silly owl clock ticking steadily in the darkness, but that was all. It must be nearly time for him to get up, he thought. And he must have had another dream. No one had called him Agent 340 in such a long time, although it really wasn't, not for an Ultra. Even on Earth's highly shortened scale duration, it wasn't all that long. But so much had happened since he'd come here in that time as Agent 340. Seemed more distant than it really was. He waited and still heard only the silly owl clock. His eyelids became heavy and he let them fall closed. No, I should call you by the name you're known here on Earth, Ultraseven. Instantly, he was wide awake again, blinking up at the tall red and silver figure standing over him. The pattern of his colors was different from his own. But there was no doubt that this was another Ultra. Joy surged in him at the sight of another like himself, joy and a feeling of having something restored to him that he hadn't realized was missing. Your time here has taken quite a toll on you, the other Ultra went on. You remain here on Earth at your peril. It's time, past time really, for you to return home to the land of the light. I would, Dan said, I want to, but this beautiful world has been a target for hostile forces. I can't leave it unprotected. Even Ultras reach a point where they have to think of their own well-being, the other said. Staying here will mean your death. But I can't leave now. I've seen the signs. Something terrible is imminent. I can't just turn my back on Earth. Listen to me, said the Ultra, and Dan sensed him bristling with urgency and impatience. Understand this, if nothing else. Each battle you've fought has used up part of your life force, and now you have precious little left. If you expend any more energy fighting for these humans, you'll never be able to return to your own world. You cannot transform. The Ultra made a sweeping gesture at his uniform jacket hanging on the back of a chair, and Dan saw his Ultra eye fly out of the front pocket to land on the silly owl clock. If you transform again, you will die. Cap it there for right now. Though, if you want to go ahead to page 310, in a fight with Pandon, he does seemingly die, but not really. Dan Moroboshi, there's stakes to him acting as Ultraman, Ultra-7, because he's not the merging with a human as a temporary thing. He is the human form of Ultraseven. So damage sustained to Ultraseven carries over to Dan Moroboshi. Trying to hide your secret identity as Dan Moroboshi and Ultraseven is even harder in that scenario. But I do want to talk about what happens to Ultraseven and Dan after this show, after this novel. Canonically, in later shows, he shows up a lot. Even more than he probably should. It gets to the point where I'm watching modern Ultra shows, and Ultraseven is almost more important than Ultraman. Like the main Ultraman, the original Ultraman, or Ultraman Jack, or Ultraman Zoffy. Zero sort of replaces these in terms of the connector from the old to new and the new generation shows, but even then, he is Zero. Zero is Seven's kid. So Seven will show up in Ultra Story, whatever. So the shows directly after this, Seven will have at least a cameo usually, but he's a major character in Ultraman Leo. He loses the ability to transform into Ultraseven, so he's just stuck as Dan Moroboshi, and very bitter about that fact. That follows from this, though that chief that he's talking to, the other Ultra, doesn't really show up again. It's sort of, I think, implied that is some part of Ultraseven, just retrospectively. He doesn't show up again. He doesn't order around Dan after this point. And this show was originally supposed to be in a separate timeline or continuity universe from the other Ultra shows forcing it back in means, okay, we can use Zoppy again for this role and not Ultraseven's chief. In Ultraman Leo, he's very brutal in training Leo. And part of it's because, he's a bit messed up by not being able to transform anymore. Then he dies. The entire defense team in Ultraman Leo dies. And I'm sorry to spoil that for you, but it's almost more interesting how they keep bringing Ultraseven back with the ability to transform again. Not ever explained how, though I should say in any shows. Side stories and secondary material they give differing explanations for how that happened. In Ultraman adjacent show, Mega Monster Battle, he appears in Mega Monster Battle, the movie. He dies. Then he comes back at the end of the movie. Before that, he loses his Ultraseven form. It has to be Dan Moroboshi with the Capsule Kaiju. He was told if he kept transforming to fight for the people of Earth, he would die. And he did multiple times, but it's never stopped him, and that's interesting to me. In any case, still recommend the book. The ISBN hasn't changed, still 978-1-80336-2441. Recommend you get the book. You can follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. We have a blog. Thank you all for watching. That's a wrap.